folks, as a refresh from our last talk, I just want to kind of talk about the people of North America have come from many cultures, and they spoke different languages long before the founding of the United States and even before European contact. That the tour that we're doing is going to be looking at some of these artists who use their heritage to influence and shape their art. And actually, most artists use their experience and their culture to shape their art. I had mentioned previously that the author Anna Quinlan called the United States an American quilt, fabric patched together from dissimilar parts. They were separate squares of different ethnic and cultural traditions, and they're all sewn together. And that's a great symbol that we can be inclusive and celebrate a new meaning for this mixture of contrasting cultures. So, as I mentioned, that there are many voices that have shaped this quilt of country, and many cultures have consistently provided artists and subjects and styles that have molded the development of the arts in the United States. And these many voices remind us as what we call American art means many things to different people. Not everyone sees the same things. It's a lens for you to view their work. So let me just briefly mention that last month we talked about the indigenous Americans. Some of our cultures were already in the United States, as with our indigenous Americans. We also talked about the Asian immigrants that came in. And so tonight, what we want to talk about is kind of the rest of the group. We'll continue to explore those. First, we'll start with the enslaved West Africans. Those were forcibly brought here. And then I want to talk a little about the Mexicans of California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Texas, who were also here before Manifest Destiny. And then the beginnings in 1840s, which was probably officially called the immigration starts. And between 1840 and 1920, more than 33 million Europeans immigrated to the US, the British, Scottish, Irish, Welsh, Scandinavian, Eastern and Southern European, including Greek and Italians, Polish, Germans. And then later on, the Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Dominicans, and then other Latin American groups did immigrate in. So let's start with the ancestors of Americans who didn't come here voluntarily, those from West Africa. Claudia, can we see our first slide? Or actually the next slide? There we go. And before we talk about this particular painting, I want to provide a brief overview of the National Academy of Design, which currently has an exhibit at the Crocker. And the National Academy of Design is a unique institution among museums. From its founding almost 200 years ago as the New York Drawing Association to now, it has never paid for the 8,000 pieces the organization currently owns of the paintings and visual arts, architecture that includes etchings, sculpture, and engravings. So how is that possible? I'm glad you asked. The Academy is an exclusive membership of artists and requires all the academicians, which are those are the Academy members, to donate a work that represents their style to the collection. And so from the time, for almost 200 years, every artist who has been inducted into the Academy has donated a piece of artwork that represents their style. And also from 1833 to 1994, they were also required to present a portrait of themselves that was either painted by their own hand or by that of a fellow artist. And let me just talk about how and why the National Academy of Design was founded. And it's an interesting story. And you know, every good story starts with either a fire or a fight. And so beginning in 1802, there was the American Academy of Fine Arts in New York. And that was designed after the art academies of Europe. By 1825, the students of this academy felt that there was a lack of support for teaching at the academy. And there was a lack of support from its board, which were made up of merchants, lawyers, and physicians, not artists. And most of all, there was a lack of support from their president, who was a painter named John Trumbull. The American Academy of Fine Arts also controlled how classes were taught and what the artists had access to, such as antique statues or casts, or whose art was considered acceptable. And so the fight started between Samuel Morse, an artist, and 30 fellow students, and John Trumbull, the president. And yes, that ... Samuel Morse, who invented Morse code. He was an inventor as well as a brilliant painter. Morse and his peers felt that no one but artists should be telling other artists the tools they require to succeed. Artists must educate other artists. And Trumbull ignored their concerns, and he stated, "Tell those others that gentlemen built this academy," which basically was giving the finger to the artists. So Morse and their peers split from the American Academy of Fine Arts and founded the New York Drawing Association, which was the predecessor to the National Academy of Design. And they set it up for artists and under the exclusive control of artists. Artists abandoned the Academy of Fine Arts and flocked to this new organization. And needless to say, the American Academy of Fine Arts went down the tubes. How many members are allowed in this exclusive academy? Well, there's 450. And can you apply? No. So how are they chosen? Well, each year the Academy has an exhibit and invites artists to show their work. And the artists then are secretly nominated from this exhibit and voted by the members of the Academy. And members of the Academy are vary. There's well-known artists such as Thomas Eakins and Winslow Homer and William Merritt Chase and John Singer Sargent and Andrew Wyeth, Maxfield Parrish, and our own Wayne Thiebaud and Gregory Condos. So the list is varied, and it's a great organization. As I mentioned, the Crocker has been privileged to have a traveling show from the Academy, and about 100 pieces, and that is showing right now, and it goes through October 3rd, I think. So now let's talk about this piece. And I want to start with a quote. "I would ask my teachers why they never mentioned a Negro in history. I would bring up the name of Denmark Vesely or Nat Turner or Frederick Douglass. I would mention the painters Bannister and Tanner. My teachers answered smugly and often angrily. It had been deeply ingrained in them, as in me in my first school years, that to be a Negro was something of which to be ashamed, that the Negro people were an inferior people, illiterate, uncouth." And that's a quote from Charles White, who is the artist of this magnificent piece. This particular thought and greatly influenced, and his experience greatly influenced him. And he then made a commitment to beginning to create powerful images of African Americans and what was he described as images of dignity. And it unwavered over his almost 4-decade career. He believed that he had a role to play in changing the world. He said art must be an integral part of a struggle. And he said that paint is the only weapon I have with which to fight what I resent. If I could write, I would write about it. If I could talk, I would talk about it. Since I paint, I must paint about it. White was born on the south side of Chicago to a Black domestic worker Ethelene Gary Marsh, who had immigrated from Mississippi. And his dad was a Pullman car porter of Native American descent. His mother raised him alone, and in a time before daycare, she regularly dropped him off at the main branch of the Chicago Public Library when she went to a job. And there, the staff gave him wide latitude to look at everything and anything. And he pored over illustrated books and began to draw and learn about Black history. He said, that women were a constant presence in his work. And part of this was as the spirit of his mother, because it was his mother who gave him a paint set when he was 7 years old. White won a scholarship to the prestigious School of Art Institute in Chicago when he was 19. And then 2 years later, he was commissioned by the Federal Arts Project during the Depression to execute the mural Five Great American Negroes for the George Cleveland branch of the Chicago Public Library. And then more and more mural commissions followed. What I found interesting was in the 40s, he made some drawings and paintings that his mother didn't particularly like. They were too angular and stylized. He was trained as a lithographer and a graphics designer, so his work was very, very geometric. And she didn't understand what he was doing, why he'd abstracted his subjects' bodies. And White was apparently troubled by this because he said that he made the decision that he was going to paint images that she could see and understand. So he was in the Army for a short period of time. And in 1947, in a trip to Mexico, he met Diego Rivera and attended several of the schools there, including the People's Print Workshop. That experience had a profound effect on his art, and he moved to Los Angeles in 1956, where he taught at the Otis Art Institute for the remaining years of his life. This particular piece, Mother Courage 2, like many of his works, was not of a specific person, but as an artwork intended to represent a universal symbol of women and dignity, wisdom, and strength. This latter work of White is what he believed represents his work the best. It's a single central figure that dominates the composition before a faceted background. I find it mesmerizing, it's haunting, and you can't tear your eyes away from this proud woman. He said that my whole purpose in art was to make a positive statement about mankind, all mankind, and an affirmation of humanity. He said that it doesn't mean I'm a man without angers. He said, I've had my work in museums where I wasn't allowed to see it. But what I pour into my work is the challenge of how beautiful life can be. So this is a stunning piece in the collection, and it glows even more than you can see on the screen. But it is, it's just executed beautifully, and it's, as I said, it's mesmerizing. Any comments or questions on this particular one? Okay.
I just love the background. I love how he didn't make it easy on himself in terms of the portrait. The portrait is exquisite, but the background is complicated and really engaging. It's quite beautiful. I love the colors.
It is, and you're absolutely right. It is a very intriguing background, and you don't know if it's a quilt,
yes,
or if it's a series of paper or a batik cloth. Beg your pardon, Melissa?
Tile.
Yeah, you don't know what if it is what it is exactly, but it certainly, it kind of draws it. You'd think that a detailed and busy background like that would draw away from the central figure, but it doesn't. It seems to enhance the woman standing before it. And the red hat, the blue cloak, and the single hand that to me rests gently from her side is it is very calm and peaceful. All right. Any other comments? We'll move on to our next one. And this is in the current a current show also at the Crocker, which is called The Legends of Los Angeles. And it features works of Betty and her artist daughters, Leslie and Allison Sarr. And unfortunately, this show ends Sunday. So there's still time to go see it if you'd like to. Betty Sarr is an artist known for assemblage and collage works. She uses found object process to explore, and in her words, the realities of African-American oppression and the mysticism of symbols by combining everyday objects. She says that she's the kind of person who recycles materials, but she also recycles emotions and feelings. And she said, I had a great deal of anger about the segregation and the racism in this country. And most of her works reflect that political activism and emotion with that. She gathers items from her own life, including bits of fabric and photos and household items. And she even goes to flea markets and swap meets for other things. She was raised in LA, and she worked as an interior designer in the 50s and then shifted to printmaking a decade later. But, you know, after the Watts Rebellion and the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. in the 60s, she began to create these assemblage pieces that reference politics and racism and racist symbols. She has a whole series on Aunt Jemima. And by the 1970s, she emerged as part of the Black arts movement and remains best known for her collage and assemblage works. There are numerous examples of Betty's artwork that are more political and have social commentary. However, I chose this piece, Remembering Friendship, as it's a touching homage to a family member. And the piece is an early example of her mixing family heirlooms and photos. And it was completed a year after the death of her beloved great aunt, Hattie Parson Keyes. So the bits of jewelry and lace and fabric rosettes and photographic portraits all to embody her memories of her great aunt and her lineage associated with race and social class. And I just find it soft and compassionate and touching. It's not a huge piece, but it's chocked and block full of memories, and very different than most of the artwork that is in this particular collection. Do you have any comments or questions on this one?
What is that square piece at the top?
I believe it's a brooch, Lillian.
Huh.
It's a piece of jewelry.
I see.
Kind of like the one at the bottom too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one looks like a brooch, but the top one, I couldn't tell if it was a little compact or what.
I don't know. I don't know how the woman on the left held her head up with all that hair.
I think those are feathers, Melissa. That's not her hairdo. I think it's feathers in a hat.
Lordy.
All right, Claudia, let's go on to our next one. And this is a newer acquisition at the Crocker, and it's called Hiding from the Coon Dog. And it is an intriguing piece. And the artist, Thornton Dial, was born in Alabama, and he was a family of 4 generations of sharecroppers. And I came across a really interesting interview him in the mid 1990s. And so I'm going to read, as I'm going along, some of the excerpts from it. And he started with talking about when he was growing up. He said they were sharecropping, picking cotton. They kept on farming and didn't ever come out of debt. The man advanced people from one end of the year to the other end. Every year, the man always say, you just about come out of debt this time, but you didn't quite make it. And, you know, that was an interesting, I thought that was such an interesting point, in that that was not uncommon with sharecroppers or miners, you know, the owners
Company
who own the
towns.
mining towns or anything, is that you bought everything from the company's store. Even the migrant workers, the pickers in California, you bought everything from the store, and you bought everything on credit. And you may have just about got out of debt, but you didn't. So you had to keep working the farm. When he was 3, Thornton was sent to live with a cousin who enlisted his help on the farm, but more importantly, he also showed him how to make sculptures from found objects. And Thornton said, I always had the idea to draw. He said, put time at something like that and you get better at it. I put in more time with drawing than I did with my lessons. Instead of being in my books, I was into drawing, and Professor King, the principal over at the school, gave us so many ass whippings back then. Shoot, they'd whip you till you pee in your pants. So I quit school and went to work at the ice house. It was more safe. So his experiences growing up then began to frame a lot of the artwork that he did later in his life. At 13, he went to work as a metalworking, making railroad cars, parts at the Pullman Standard Company in Alabama. And it wasn't until 1981, when the plant closed, that he actually dedicated himself to art. So he hadn't really been an artist up until then, but at that point he started doing artwork. Like Betty Saar, he was known for his collages and assemblages, but unlike Saar, his works combined paint and very non-traditional materials. He was described as an outsider because he was never formally studied art. And he was also called a folk artist. He said that it seemed like some people believe that just because I ain't got no education, say I must be too ignorant for art. Seems like some people always going to value the Negro that way. I believe I have proved that my art is about ideas and about life and the experience of the world. His work today is actually considered very forward thinking, and indeed in many museums, and it's in many museums, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Smithsonian. Some even liken it to contemporary and modern artists such as Jackson Pollock by pushing the boundaries of how to use materials. And if you look at this in a different way, it does almost resemble that dripping, that drip that Jackson Pollock did. He said that art is strange looking stuff, and most people don't understand art. Most people don't understand my art, the art of the Negroes, because most people don't understand me, and they don't understand the Negroes at all. If everybody understand one another, wouldn't no one make art? Art is something to open your eyes. Art is for understanding. So what I think Dial did so well was invoke a sense of history of the South. And he addressed themes that included Black history, slavery, discrimination, and some spirituality. In this particular piece, Hiding from the Coon Dog, he creates an image, an imagined experience of the first African in America, presumably an enslaved individual has run away and is being tracked by dogs. He said his art is evidence of my freedom. And he said, I can start any piece of art. I can pick up anything I want to pick up. And when I get ready for that, I already got my idea for it. And I start with whatever fits with my ideas. So it's a piece that's done with actual corn stalks on canvas and rubber, and there's some compound that puts together with other materials and enamel, and there's oil, and it's all mounted on wood. So the more you look at it, the more the face may not be evident at first, but the more you begin to look at it, you can see that face peering out.
Is it very large?
Beg your pardon?
Is it very large?
It's about, I think it's about 4 by 4. So it's a good sized piece. It may be a little bit bigger than that.
Suzanne, I haven't seen this one. Where is it located?
It's in the middle gallery.
Thank you.
In the contemporary gallery,
Yes.
in the middle one, 3. I don't remember the name of it. I should.
Thank you.
But it
It's in
is.
the first
It is
gallery, I
very
think.
very dimensional. You look at it from the side, it has a whole different feeling than when you look at it straight on.
Suzanne, I think it's in the first gallery along
Oh.
with the Bay Area figurative work. 'cause I
Oh, well,
saw it today.
Judy, you were just there, so yeah, it's
I'm
in
there today.
It's either first or second gallery.
yeah.
Thank you, Judy.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this one? Oh, someone else, Melissa?
What is a splash zone compound?
My understanding is that, and I can, Pam Saltenberger, if you know, it's kind of this gluish, rubberized medium that you use, and it kind of comes out kind of a sticky clay type thing.
Okay.
It's very rubbery.
Rubbery, right?
In application, yeah.
Yeah, and my understanding, it hardens really nicely.
Yes.
Okay.
Susanne, was he acknowledged before his death then? Well, I see he died about 5 years ago, but did he benefit financially from his sales before he died?
I don't know a good question about if he financially benefited, but he was beginning to be well known by the end of the 80s, 90s. His work started to be well known, because in the mid 90s, when he was being interviewed, he was talking this was all he was being interviewed about, his art. So I would imagine that he did have some remuneration from that. I don't know how wealthy it was, and I don't know what this particular piece cost at all. It was, I'm understanding I think it was bought by and then donated to the Crocker, as many pieces are. Okay, let's move on to Mexican artists. Now, this wonderful painting was done by Xavier Martinez. He was born in Guadalajara, Mexico, and early on he showed an aptitude for drawing, and he started studying pre-Columbian art and indigenous design in his teens at the grammar school.
Oh, sorry, Suzanne, sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. Okay.
Sorry. I can't do anything with my mouse but just leave it.
Leave it. There you go. For the teens at a grammar school for men in Guadalajara. And after his mother died, he was 17, and Martinez was looked after by an aristocratic woman named Rosalina La Batista de Cuni. And she was known for her philanthropic activity, and she adopted Xavier And when her husband, who was the consul general in Paris, was reassigned to San Francisco, she sent Xavier there to pursue his artistic training. And so Martinez enrolled at the Mark Hopkins Institute of Design, which many did at that time, which today is known as the San Francisco Artists Institute. And like most artists, art students of the day, when he graduated in a late 1897, he left for Paris to continue his education. And 2 years at the Paris École des Beaux-Arts, and then 2 more at the Académie Carré. And this is really an important point in his life, because he was studying at this facility, and then he also met the artist James Whistler, and that changed and influenced how Martinez would paint for the rest of his life. At the Académie Carré, it was founded by Eugene Carré, who was well known for these dusty Rubenesque type portraits with very strong chiaroscuro effects. Now, chiaroscuro, we've talked about before, is that effect of contrasting light and shadow, and it's created by light falling unevenly or from a particular direction onto something. He was also enamored with the Spanish masters, and he would, after seeing them in the Louvre, and he would spend a lot of time there looking and practicing and drawing those. So you see in the Bathers, you can see all those styles that Martinez encountered in Europe and brought back with him, this tonal or the light dark little color of Whistler and the Carré influence, and in this beautiful kind of dark landscape and wooded pool with these tiny frolicking figures. It's also at the time where he embraced the symbolistic movement, and the symbolistic, suggest a dreamy reality rather than a detailed reality. And it was different than Impressionism. It kind of could be thought of as maybe the forerunner to modernism art, because the artists wanted to suggest ideas through symbols and the meaning behind forms and shapes and colors. And they wanted to express that idea behind that physical reality that lay spiritual reality, using dreams and visions. So this painting has a very ethereal feel. It's very dreamlike, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're not sure where it is, but it seems someplace you might want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily mean it is any place, or it could be a composite of many places, which is what many of the symbolist painters did. Martinez returned to San Francisco in 1901. He set up a studio. He co-founded the California Society of Artists, and he kept traveling. And after his studio was destroyed in the 1906 earthquake, he moved to Monterey, and he founded an art gallery there in the Hotel Del Monte. And then he taught at the California College of Arts until 1942, which was the year before he died. He was very much an accomplished artist that contributed a lot of his personal time, a lot of his efforts, a lot of his skills to the development of art in California, and specifically in San Francisco. So it is a lovely piece. It's not particularly large. It's about a little over a foot by 16 inches long, but it has this just lovely, dreamy quality. Excuse me. Any comments on this little baby? Okay, let's jump ahead almost 100 years to another countryman. And this is the artist Tino Rodriguez. And like Martinez, Rodriguez was also born and raised in Guadalajara, Mexico. And he said he was influenced in his youth by the symbolism and themes in the Catholic Church, as well as his fascination with fairy tales and the Aztec, Mayan, and Olmec mythology and culture. Growing up, he was surrounded by, with his family ancestry through a lot of oral history telling. And most of his works incorporates this fantastical imagery. It combines animals and human forms and dreamlike backgrounds and setting. He said his work is my search for a spiritual philosophy that transcends simple duality. Western religions often set up simplistic dualities, good and evil, heaven and hell, spirit and body. And I'm fascinated by the complexity of human sexuality, transformation, longing, and transgression. And all of his paintings include these themes over and over and over again. So it's kind of some pretty complex and deep stuff in his paintings. Yeah. He studied in Paris also at the Sorbonne. He received his BA from the San Francisco Art Institute and then an Master of Fine Arts from the University of New Mexico. And as you can see, he starts to draw upon his literature and mythology of these diverse cultures to create these lush, rich, detailed, and almost hypnotic imagery. He says he wants to inspire us with visual beauty and the freedom to accept the beauty of difference. So as I mentioned, he really explores metamorphosis and transformation. He also challenges gender ideologies, and in many of his works, he attempts to claim for himself and others these feminine behaviors and feelings. So let's take a look at this piece. Much like the nude bathers, he serves up, his art as a kind of a tasty, surreal, dreamlike dish. But unlike the nude bathers, which is quite tranquil, there is a lot happening in this artwork. And we can kind of start a little with the Aztec mythology. And the name of the piece gives it away. It's Xochipilli, and the name is Xochipilli's ecstatic universe. So Xochipilli is the prince of flowers, the god of summer, pleasure, love, the god of beauty, song, and dance. So also, Xochipilli has also been interpreted as the patron of homosexuals and male prostitutes. So there's a lot of symbolism going on with this particular piece. It's a self-portrait with Rodriguez as the ecstatic deity. And he appears kind of as this dual creature, both male and female. So take a look at the face and the brows. And you can see that he pays homage to another of his countrymen, a Mexican artist, and that's Frida Kahlo. You can see with the bird brows, she had very heavy, dark brows. If you look at all these little vignettes throughout the painting, there's hummingbirds and butterflies, and there's an Egyptian sphinx and the infant Buddha. And
ballerinas.
And ballerinas, and it's a skeleton. It's a skeleton ballerina, like Dia de los Muertos.
Right.
And it's always continues to reinforce his theme of transformation throughout his painting. And it's a world that is rich in pleasure, a lot of symbolism, and very much like the nude bathers, it alters our reality and perceptions. So it's an intriguing piece, and the more you look at it, the more you see different things and begin to wonder what a lot of the symbolism is. Anybody have any comments or thoughts on this particular piece?
I just assumed that was Frida Kahlo.
Oh, the face?
Yeah, was that supposed to be him?
Yeah, it's him.
Huh.
When Claudia mentioned yesterday when we were looking at it, she says it also looks like Diego Rivera. And in a way it does, if you see a photo of Diego Rivera.
Yeah, I pulled up a
Oh,
photo
oh.
of Diego Rivera and said, I think it looks like Diego Rivera.
Rivera. So there's,
Smith.
you know, artists don't always tell you everything. I mean, they'll give you a
Right.
basic overview. Yeah, this is transformation. This is my spiritual thing, you know, but it's kind of up to the viewer and your perception on what you think is going on with it. But he certainly brings his heritage and experience with him in each of the art pieces he does. All right.
Dan, you know, the little pieces that he has inserted in there, like the ballerina that's a skeleton, which is a little different than what I'm going to mention, but and the little Balinese dancer and the different ones. There's an artist in Carmel, and Lillian, you may know who it is. Her name is well, it just escaped me. Lynn Lupetti. And she paints all these little fantasy people, you know, inserts them into her beautiful, bright artworks. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Huh. I haven't heard that name in a long time. Huh.
Yeah, she's over on Dolores, or at least her gallery used to be. I don't know if it's still there.
Oh, well,
No, I don't think
thanks,
so.
Connie. I'll have to look her up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, he's got some psilocybin in there. He's got some magic mushrooms.
Yeah, I wondered what that was.
There's a lot of things in there.
Yeah, the hummingbird's going after the magic mushroom.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, let's turn to the great immigration from Europe. And let's start with this wonderful piece.
Wow.
This is by our friend Thomas Hill, and many of you may be familiar with Thomas Hill. He painted the great canyon of the Sierra. That is kind of the jewel of the Crocker collection. It's a huge piece, about 6 feet by 10 feet, and it's of Yosemite. And Thomas Hill was born in England, and he came to the United States as a young person. He following his father to Massachusetts, and he apprenticed to a carriage painter and later joined an interior decorating firm in Boston. By 1850s, he had moved to Philadelphia, where he studied at the Pennsylvania Academy of Arts. And then a year later, and this is where things began to change for him, he went to the White Mountains of New Hampshire. And that was a region that was associated with the Hudson River School. And the Hudson River School was kind of on a tandem course or parallel course to the Barbizon style that was in France. And it's this very style that beauty is reflective of the day. It's somewhat romantic. It is a little looser than some of the tighter brushstrokes that were before, but it also gives a sense of grandeur. They were mostly landscapes, and it was a change in how paintings were done up until then. So by the onset of the Civil War, he moved to California, and he made his first sketching trip to the Sierra Nevada in 1865. And of course, he ultimately became known for his depictions of Yosemite Valley. He did many, many pieces. He traveled to France in 1866 and then again became acquainted with the Barbizon style. So his art became more expressive and emotional, and more the realism and the color, looser brushstrokes, and kind of a more dreamy, softer form. In California, when he came back, he became known for painting the Golden State's most spectacular and rugged terrain. And this landscape is set on the outskirts of San Francisco. It's looking, you are west, you are looking east towards the Golden Gate, where the Golden Gate Bridge would be. You can see Fort Point right on the edge, on the bottom, right in the the foreground on the middle part. Angel Island kind of sits in the center. It's that triangle piece. And then Sausalito would be to your left. So the Golden Gate would span that section. And where you're looking is where the Sutro baths are kind of located. So you're looking straight up that towards the Golden Gate. And it is a beautiful piece. It's, you know, picnickers are enjoying the day, and other sightseers take in the view at the very, very top of the cliff. You can just make out the little tiny piece. But this is, it, you know, it does reflect the style of the day. It evokes more than the grandeur of the environment. It's very powerful, but yet, to me, it's a very intimate, human, and very comfortable piece of artwork. It's much different than his Yosemite piece, which is a magnificent landscape. This has the landscape, but then I kind of feel that you're there, and you're walking to the group of people in the foreground, and you can kind of feel the breeze and the smelling of the salt air. And it's actually such a common thing that they are doing. They're having a picnic in the spectacular setting. And it is a stunning piece. It is a stunning piece. And it is a relatively new acquisition too.
His use of light is stunning.
It is lovely, isn't it? Melissa, anyone go in and see this one, and this piece is in the same room as the Yosemite piece. It's on obviously a different wall, but it evokes such a different feeling when you are standing in front of it. I love this piece. I take it home. I don't think I have a wall big enough, but I'd still take it.
Well, it's like what, 4.5 feet by 9 feet or 8 feet? Not 8.5 feet.
It's a big piece also, very large, and of course spectacularly framed in one of those traditional gold frames that they had at the time. So it's massive, but it really you know you're in California. I mean, I really think you know you're in California. Even if you didn't know you were in the San Francisco, you know you were in California. This is just such a unique coastline. Okay, any other questions or comments or thoughts? All right, let's go to the next one, Claudia. Okay, Mary Brady, born in Ireland. She is one of the most progressive artists of her day. And she was the first California woman to spend significant time in Giverny in France. And of course, she was heavily influenced by Monet, hence spending much time in Giverny, which was Monet's home and gardens. And as I said, she was born in Ireland. She came to California with her family, and she began her art study at the California School of Design. And she continued her training in Paris, at the Académie Julian. And then she visited Giverny numerous times for several years. And then when she returned to California, she began to frequent the Monterey Peninsula. And she applied all the techniques and new skills of Impressionism to the California landscape. And so this gorgeous piece, Sand Dunes in Monterey, was exhibited with the Society of American Artists in New York. And the newspaper at the time in San Francisco declared that Miss Brady had achieved a distinct success. Her sand dunes in California are unmistakably under a Monterey sky. And all of you who have been to Monterey, which is all of us, know what that kind of sky is like. And there is something, there's something different about the air, the salt air in California. And they have said that there is, the ions are different, and that it does provide a very brilliant light. And and you can see that on how the Impressionists was their search for light. And you can see this in most of the Impressionist paintings. This one is just spectacular. It's very vital, and it is just stunning. She lived in the Bay Area until her death, and we were very fortunate to have this particular piece from her. So I'm sure, this, I don't know where this at exactly is in Monterey, but it could be just about anywhere. Near Seal Rocks or north of Asilomar, or I don't know. It's gorgeous. Okay. Any other comments or thoughts about this one? Okay. All right, Claudia. Let's move to our German immigrant, Karl Jens. He did it all. He painted portraits, and he did still lifes and genre subjects and figures and landscapes and watercolors and oil. He was born in Germany. He studied in Berlin and Paris, of course, at the Académie Julian. And then he painted murals in Germany and Scotland before immigrating to the United States at the turn of the 20th century. He settled in New York City, and then he moved to Southern California in 1910. He became very active in the Los Angeles and the Pasadena art communities. He moved to Laguna Beach, where he became a founding member of the Laguna Beach Art Association, and he lived there until his death in 1945. The Crocker had quite a selection of German artists. They were very prevalent, and they loved California. And however, what I find really intriguing about this particular painting is the perspective, and that you are sitting actually lower than the woman walking under the eucalyptus trees and the building that's in the background. And I also think the shadows and the light are truly, it's a true post-impressionist painting, and it's done with these vivid and saturated colors, and it's summer. You know that feel. It's dry, and the dirt and the grasses are dry, and you can probably hear the rustling of the leaves of the eucalyptus tree. And this particular painting is of the Arch Beach Tavern. Now, the Arch Beach Tavern was built in 1915, and it was to house people in the motion picture industry. And the building also served as headquarters for prospective buyers who came to consider purchasing a lot in the Arch Beach Heights, which is just up from Laguna Beach. Very exclusive spot now. So the Arch Beach Tavern was also the headquarters for selling those, as I said, for selling those lots. And you could go and see the lot, or you could buy it from the map, and any lot was $10. So it was then, it was also used for filming sometimes inside motion picture scenes, the big office. And then it was named the Sunset Inn when it was made into apartments in the late 1920s. And Claudia, would you move to the next slide, please? And here is the Arch Beach Tavern, built in 1915. And this is the apartments, the Arch Beach apartments. They changed the name from the Sunset Inn apartments today. And they added a third floor, as you can see.
Oh.
It's still there, and you can still rent an apartment. And I was reading up on it a little bit. They say it's haunted, which obviously adds to it some mystique. But it's kind of nice to see. Well, it's a lot different than when it was built in 1915, obviously. There's houses behind it up the hill. And obviously there's a lot more greenery around. And those hills were pretty barren at that time. Yeah. So, comments, questions? thoughts?
Well, the painting certainly looks like a California scene with that, you know, the trees, the eucalyptus.
It does, doesn't it? It does, Lillian. You're absolutely right. And it feels dry. It feels, you know,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just feels dry. Okay. Where are we off to now, Claudia? Are we in Norway? There we go. All right.
Ooh,
This artist was born in Norway, Paul Loritz, and he began his art career by actually watching other artists who used to come to his picturesque hometown, and he'd watch them paint. He started formal art training at the Lavik Art School in Oslo, which was very well known at the time. And then when he was 16, he left for Vancouver, Canada. He then moved to Portland, Oregon, and he worked as a commercial artist. And from there, he went to Alaska with his wife and brother, and he worked in a gold mine. But by 1920, he moved to LA and he opened a studio and he started painting portraits. But he quickly got bored and changed his focus to the marine and the landscape views. He also served as the president of the California Art Club. Loritz pretty much painted extensively in California and was particularly happy in the Sierra, which of course reminded him of home.
Sure.
And he just said there was a lot of rhythm and decorative motion among the peaks. He sketched outdoors, but he always completed his larger canvases in the studio. He used very large brushes and palette knives, but I think what is so amazing about this piece is how he brilliantly captured that fleeting shadow, and then those pastel colors that kind of show that it's a thinning atmosphere. You kind of feel you're up higher. There's a a clearness, but it also feels thin.
Right. Is that Mammoth Lake?
I don't know I don't know where this is, Melissa. It's just called the High Sierra. So he traveled all over. So it could very well be Mammoth Lake.
Those are the really high Sierras. That's probably up at 10, 11,000 feet.
Yeah, and and you can see that where the tree line stops.
Yeah.
And there could be more trees around, but artists also took license at the time, artistic license, and he may not have painted everything that was there because they wanted to make a certain type of feeling or scene. But this is just a stunning piece, and I am so impressed on how, I keep calling it thin, but how thin the air looks, the sky looks. Okay, any other comments? All right, let's go to our next piece. These beautiful ceramics are from Gertrude and Otto Natzler, and they were born in Austria. Both of them were born in Vienna, and although neither of them did not receive formal training in ceramic making, they both had an interest in clay, and they ultimately formed this extraordinary partnership. Otto pursued violin studies to start with, and then he took a textile design course and then started working for a local necktie company. He married his first wife in 1930 when he was 22, and then he met Gertrude 3 years later when she was working as a secretary, and she was taking a ceramics course at a local workshop. After divorcing his first wife, Otto was infatuated with Gertrude first, and then he was infatuated with experimenting with glazes. So Gertrude was really a quick study. She became adept at throwing the clay, and within 2 years of their meeting, they had established a studio together. And frankly, although they were self-taught, by 1938, the same year in which they married, they were awarded a silver medal at the Paris International Exhibit for their ceramics. And that was the same year that Nazi Germany invaded Austria, and the Naslers left Vienna for California, and they took two things. They took Gertrude's potting wheel and their electric kiln. They settled in Los Angeles, and they became very serious, committed to their art. They gave classes until they could establish a market for their work, which actually happened quite soon. So for more than 30 years, the two were powerhouses in ceramics, with Gertrude throwing the elegant, very delicate looking thin-walled forms, and then Otto would glaze them. By the time Gertrude died in 1971, they had created about 25,000 works, and Otto had devised more than 2,500 unique colors and styles of glazes. Gertrude died as I said, in 1971. Then Otto married a photographer, and 2 years later. And initially he refused to glaze the last set of pots that Gertrude had thrown, but his wife then soon convinced him to return to his work. He died at 99. And these are two very extraordinary pieces. And I know that the one on the left may not strike everybody's fancy, and it's probably not a great photograph, but it's a chartreuse glaze. And that defines this particular bowl, but you can see how delicate the form is, and it looks almost like glass.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it looks like a blown glass bowl, but it is ceramic. And then the vase at the right is glazed with called Starry Night glaze. And it's probably a little challenging to see at this point, but the way it's glazed and the type of chemicals that he used and how he laid them on give them these little star-like points of light on this particular vase. So they're very extraordinary, and museums hold the Nasler ceramics in high regard, as do most ceramicists in the United States and international. Okay, any other comment?
Beautiful.
Okay, well, I'd kind of like to end this presentation with one of my favorites. I have a lot of favorites.
Oops.
Whoop. Well, okay.
Your favorite?
Well, the other favorite.
You know what? It's not in here.
What happened?
I don't know.
Oh, maybe when you put the new one in?
Maybe.
Oh, dear, dear, dear. Okay.
Huh.
Well, there she is. There she is.
Oh, wow.
Okay, now let me see if I can get there from here.
Okay. There we go. All right. Thank you, Claudia, for finding her. This is by Loet van der Veen, Dutch. And he was born in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. And throughout his childhood, he frequented the local zoo, which was near his home. And he was a very familiar face among the staff who allowed him to assist in their caretaking duties. The zoo also served as his daily entertainment, and it also developed his dreams of traveling abroad, particularly to Africa, and made him very appreciative of wildlife, which became the primary subject of his later bronze sculptures. The German invasion of Rotterdam during the Second World War brought kind of an end to van der Veen's school visits. He was devastated when, in preparation for the bombardment in 1940, the Dutch army killed all the zoo's dangerous species. because they wanted to minimize the chaos that might ensue if the zoo was bombed and those animals escaped. So he said that it bothered me that the animals were shot, but with the German occupation, I began to see much more horrible things, human suffering. He escaped the Nazi-held occupied territory through Belgium. And then after the war, Van der Veen spent brief periods of time in Zurich, London, and New York, and he pursued a career as a fashion designer. In New York, though, he met Fong Chao, who was an accomplished ceramicist and the curator of the Far Eastern Department of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And he was fascinated by clay and then the complex art of glazing. So he grew weary of fashion design, and then he took private lessons with Chow for more than 3 years. And by 1959, Van der Veen had moved to California and settled on the coast of Big Sur, California. And his home and studio were designed by Mark Mills. And some of you might recognize Mark Mills as an apprentice to Frank Lloyd Wright. And so his home and studio were a reflection of kind of a Wright style home. And it was very calming, and it gave him the time to focus on his ceramics. He began sculpting animal figures, first as ceramic, and then ceramic with bronze parts, and then almost exclusively in bronze. And he's known today for his remarkable ability to capture the subtle expressions and gestures of animals with minimal detail. And this beautiful piece, Stalking Cheetah, is one of many that he did. And the Crocker is very pleased that they have such a huge collection of Loot van der Veens. He remained on the Monterey Peninsula till the end of his life. He divided his time between his home in Big Sur and a condominium in Carmel. Not a big drive, actually. He passed away pretty recently, about 6 years ago, and he left a massive collection of his bronzes to the Crocker, and as well as he underwrote many of the museum's purchases. So a lot of the times when you're in the museum, you'll see from Loot van der Veen collection, or Loot van der Veen donation, or from purchase by Loot van der Veen. So we had a show a couple of years ago of his pieces, and they ranged from very incredibly large to very, very small. And each of these had this very sleek, stylistic look to these animals. And it was very challenging for me not to touch them, because you just want to run your hand over these, and that's a no-no. You're not allowed to do that. But Pam, our dear Pam Hyde, actually purchased in an auction a one called Sitting Cheetah. And so
it's the lazier sibling of this one.
And when I feel the urge to touch it, I go to her house and run my hand over it. But it is a lovely, lovely piece. And you can still purchase Van der Veens. I mean, his bronzes. When he cast something, he would cast several hundred of them. So they're not rare, but they're very valued. So comments or questions on this one?
Well, Susanne, there were several of his pieces down at the Big Sur Art Gallery, and they have a sign that says, "Please touch."
Oh, nice.
Because you just can't help it, but I thought that was very interesting. Please touch.
Please touch. Yeah, I wish they could say some of the things in the museum for that.
Well, you can't in Crocker.
Yeah. So anyone have any comments or or thinking, because I want to thank you for sharing this journey today on the many artist voices who have added to the
Oh,
richness of the American
you.
art quilt.
Big
And
collection.
it is a lovely collection. I urge you to go see the For America collection from the National Academy of Design.
Is that a big collection that's there?
Yeah, it's about 100 pieces.
Takes up the main room?
No, they actually have it in two of the other two smaller rooms on the second floor. And there's some stunning pieces in there, and of course artists that you will recognize. There are a lot of their artwork, and others that you will not. Then if you can get over by Sunday to see the LA Legends from LA, that will be there through Sunday. And I urge you to do that. And of course the Tiffany exhibit is there also still. That's through
That takes up the big one.
Yeah.
Suzanne, this is Pam. If I can put in a plug too, now that the Crocker is reopened, we are doing tours again. So if any of you are interested in coming, you of course have to make a reservation, get your ticket. But we are doing tours again, not for children, but for adults in family groups.
Great.
You're right. Okay.
Is it still open Thursday through Sunday?
Yes, for right now,
Okay.
Thursday through Sunday until they expand the hours. So
I think this Sunday is Pay What You Want Sunday too.
there we go. Pay what you want. All righty. Well, if no one else has any comments or thoughts, I'm going to turn it over to Claudia to finish out the night with a meditation.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was a wonderful collection.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
And there I am. Okay, my friends, let me see if we can find the meditation slide that struck me. There it is. So, as we get ready to meditate, I wanted to focus on this beautiful picture by Thomas Hill. Now, it's clear from all of Thomas Hill's paintings that he loves California, our beautiful state. As you sit comfortably, go ahead and consciously relax your whole body. You could scan your body in your mind's eye and see where you're holding any tension. Maybe your shoulders or your neck or your core, and just say relax. Just tell it to relax. Some people say it works best if you lightly close your eyes to shut out any visual distractions. Another way of doing this is to just look at this beautiful painting. Soften your gaze. And just focus on it as you relax. And as we always do, breathe. Breathe in deeply, counting to a count of 4 or 5. And exhale even longer. Exhaling to a count of 8 or 10. And breathe. Now maybe in your mind's eye, you can imagine yourself as a picnicker, sitting on the shore, listening to the waves. Or maybe you can see yourself on board that ship out there, sailing on the ocean and anticipating your arrival in San Francisco. Or maybe you can imagine yourself on that sailboat, gliding on the bay. Listen to the waves in your mind's eye. Feel the cool breeze on your face. Hear the birds calling out to each other. Someone said, life is like the ocean. It can be calm and still, or rough and rigid. But in the end, It's always beautiful. So I invite you to take your attention inward and feel the rhythm of your body, the pulsing beat of your heart. Steady, calm, rhythmic, like the waves of the ocean. And you might say to yourself, I am here. I am safe. I am taking care of myself. And now, as you continue your breathing, I invite you to reflect on this poem, Promises of a New Day by Belinda Stotler. The steady cadence of the vast sea stirs a restless desire that engulfs me. Like an infinite force I dare not impede, briefly rushing in only then to recede, beckoning me to live life's safe shore into the deep waters of mystery and lore. The seagull's cry seems to call to me to follow them over the endless sea, where I'd be free to spread my wings and discover the new life the sea brings. Yet fear holds me fast to a familiar place, away from the unknown trials I could face. Even the ocean's waves seem to conspire, relentlessly calling me to stoke curiosity's fire, as they rumble ashore with impatient haste, swirling around my feet with purpose haste, urging me to follow as they return to the sea, leaving a rich trail of life and its memories for me. As the day slowly wanes on the sea's horizon, I ponder the sea's glittering trail to the sun, inviting me to watch its vibrant, dying light before the day's life gives way to the night. Still, I linger a while after it faded away, wondering about the promises of tomorrow's new day. As you imagine the rise and fall of the waves, think of those things that in your life have evolved over time. The shift and the change of dreams, relationships, maybe even your life's purpose. What is it that you'd like to release now? What do you no longer need to hold on to? I invite you to let those things flow out with the tide. Cast your worries, your fears, your faults, your foibles into the sea and see them flowing out past the Golden Gate Bridge. Release those things, those people, those memories that no longer serve you. And now there's space. Space for more good, space for more joy, space for more health, space for more prosperity in your life. What do you want more of? Feel it, See it and fill the void that you created with more goodness. And open your whole body, mind, and soul to receive all that and more. I am here. I am here. Relaxed, at peace, calm, and present. I am here. And now, my friends, I invite you to gently bring yourself back into our space together. Thank you, Susanne, for another wonderful, informative evening.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you, my friends, for joining us tonight. So,
Thank you both once again for a wonderful show. It was
Oh, thank
beautiful.
you. Gosh, this was
Yes,
great. It's nice to
great.
see all of you, Pam and Jan and Karen and Ralph and Catherine. I feel like Nancy and, and Pat.